Welcome back to the Deep Digger Sports Pod. I'm your host, Drew. My other host right over there.
What's up? It's D. Good to see you again. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. Drop some comments below. Let us know your thoughts.
Today we are talking Big Ten football. We are going to be choosing who's our favorite team to win it, who's our favorite team to be disappointing, breakout players, player of the year. Where do you want to start on this list?
So let's start off on the negative and let's get to the positives.
So, who will be this year's most disappointing team in the Big Ten? I'm going to go and throw out my names. I'm going to go with either Nebraska with Matt Rule. They haven't really generated the success that they would hope. Dylan Raiola, they've put all of their eggs in that basket. And yes, he's had flashes, but we've seen him struggle at times. There hasn't been a good Matt Rule team for a long time. So that's where I'm kind of like, this could fall apart easily. Just at the quarterback position, the whole program could collapse. But I also want to go USC. Lincoln Riley was brought in to be the guy that fixes USC, that puts them back on the map, that makes them a destination, makes them a powerhouse. And it just hasn't come together, especially on the offensive side of the ball where he's supposed to be an expert. So those are kind of my two choices, but who did you go with?
Yeah, so I went with Indiana, and I feel like this is a pretty chalk answer, but honestly, it's one that I feel pretty entrenched in at this point. I think that last year they did get by with a fairly easy schedule. They brought in, Coach Signetti. Coach Signetti also brought in a ton of transfer students that he was really comfortable with from JMU. This year, a tougher schedule. I think that they have a lot of roster turnover. They lose their quarterback, Curtis Rourke. They get Fernando Mendoza. Obviously, I think some people see that as an upgrade. I'm not 100% sold on it. So they lost 13 of 22 starters. And I think that right off the rip, like in the Big Ten, they're going to have, if they win two of these games, I would be surprised. So their first three games in the Big Ten are Illinois, then they're taking on Iowa, and then Oregon. It's very possible that they go 0-3 on that run, and I just don't think that the playoff hopes, as far as where everybody has them pinned at, which is, oh yeah, Indiana, more than likely they're going to be in the playoff. That is not, I don't think that's the case here. I think they take a big step back. I think that for everyone saying like, oh yeah, but they had a lot of transfer students last year. Signetti knows how to build it with transfer. All of those transfers, pretty much for the most part, were guys that he was comfortable with from JMU. Now you're taking in guys that you don't have a previous relationship with, and then turning them into full-on starters at your program. I just don't know if we can, see that from Signetti. I think that they take a real big step back this year, especially with everyone kind of proclaiming that they are perennial, playoff team.
Well, let's shift a little bit to the other end of the spectrum. Who's your most surprising team that's going to be successful this season?
My biggest surprise is going to be Iowa. Mine is Iowa. I love this Iowa schedule. I don't think that it's too tough. I think they got actually a really good pool when it comes to the Big Ten. I think that, coming in, we already know what Iowa's going to do. They are going to play special teams. They are going to have a really tough defense. But they brought in a guy who is a straight up dog in Mark Gronowski, is the tied for all-time wins as a starting quarterback in the FCS. He is a guy who he's won 2 national championships at South Dakota State, and they have a offensive coordinator who vastly improved the team last year. I think Tim Lester continues to make that step up, especially with Mark Gronowski at quarterback. Tim Lester was a big reason that Gronowski actually chose Iowa, because Tim actually has a background with the Packers. He's a Matt LaFleur guy. So, taking that offense, I think that was something that Gronowski really was, gravitating towards as far as making the next jump from the FCS to now the FBS. And then ultimately he is going to go on and be an NFL quarterback. Lock it in. I think that Iowa could potentially be a playoff team.
And I'm right there with you. I'm drinking the Iowa Kool-Aid all day. I think Gronowski is going to be huge for them. They've been consistently good for the past 4 years. and I think this year could be the schedule that really lets them break out. They, I do think they will finish the season around the top 15, top 12 in the rankings. So I think Iowa's going to have a big year. Another team I wanted to shout out who I don't think has aspirations of winning the Big Ten, but I think can put together a really solid season is Minnesota. And I do not like Minnesota just because they are my favorite uniforms in the country. But I do think they're putting together a decent squad and their defense is always consistently good. I know they're bringing in a new coordinator, but I think they, with their schedule, the way it's lined up, yes, they have a tough matchup, Ohio State, Iowa, and Oregon, but the rest of those games feel really winnable to me. And I think if they can come out of the season with the 4 lost year, a nice bowl game win, you walk away feeling really good about Minnesota football. Now, I want to talk about which team has the most pressure going into this season. It was really easy for me to go Lincoln Riley and USC because there's so much hype, so much buildup with USC, and it just hasn't come through. I actually want to, zag a little bit. James Franklin with Penn State has the most pressure to not just be good, but to win a big game. They haven't, they've been really good. They haven't won really when it matters most in the biggest games of the year. And I think until you get that monkey off your back, people are going to keep on doubting you. And you have Drew Aller. He's come back, supposed to be the number one pick, supposed to be the best quarterback in the country. You have better weapons around him. You have a great defense. This team is loaded, and the expectations already set where they're the number 2 team in the country in the preseason ranking. They need to either win the Big Ten or win a big playoff game where in order if they want to silence the doubters about James Franklin winning the big game.
Yeah, no, that was going to be my answer. My answer was going to be Penn State because it feels like for a good majority of people, it is, championship or bust for this Penn State team. I think we've seen it, like how many starters they have returning, the top tier talent that they have at Penn State. But the whispers of, can James Franklin get it done? Can he win a big game? He can't do it. They are turning from whispers into shouts. And this is, if there's going to be any year that is going to happen, it is going to have to be this year. If not, then I think that is a huge black eye on the program. I think that it's a huge black eye for Drew Aller and James Franklin both, because now they are tied at the hip as far as guys that just can't win when it comes to top tier talent. And then, so it would be Penn State. I'm going to go ahead and pivot here. I think that, let me see, another pressure situation. I want to say Wisconsin. I think that Wisconsin, I think this year you have to show some sort of life. We're not too far from removed from Wisconsin being at the top of the Big Ten and consistent contenders, and now they are just lumped in with the bottom half of the group. Not even the bottom half. I think people are lumping them in like pretty bottom tier as far as the Big Ten goes. I think that they need to show some sort of life this year in order to continue to move forward as a program. I'm going to go ahead and say Wisconsin because we've both said Penn State.
Yeah, now I want to talk about who we think could be the worst team in the conference this year. I'm going to get a little hate from this, and I don't foresee it happening, but I think there's a scenario where it could. Michigan State. I know they have some players here and there, but I was a person that believed in Aiden Childs early in the season last year, and I just saw so much up and down play, the inconsistency, and I didn't really see a great ability to push the ball downfield for this Michigan State team. So I just don't feel confident going into the season, and they can very easily prove me wrong, but I feel like that's a team that has high expectations and could really fall off. The other team, I want to go with UCLA because the head coach, Sean Foster, has had some pretty like laughable moments in press conferences and situationally, but getting Nico Iamalava from Tennessee is really putting the bar up higher for them to play way better than they did last year. It's going to be interesting to see what happens if he doesn't compete at a high level for this UCLA team and they still are not winning a high level amount of games.
I think UCLA is going to be better than what they were last year. I think that you know what to expect with UCLA. At least you know that you're going to have an offensive line that kind of gets after it. You're going to have better quarterback play. I don't see them being the worst team in the conference. Do I see them being a good team? No. but I don't see them being the worst team. The worst team for me has got to be Purdue. I mean, they stunk last year. They were historically bad. Yeah, they go out there and they get who I believe is a big time head coach in Barry Odom from UNLV, but they still have a pretty tough schedule this year. I don't think they've gotten so much immensely better from year to year. I think that it's going to be a complete rebuild. I think they're going to still stink this year. Go ahead and give me Purdue.
Here's my follow up to Michigan State. They play Boston College, a team that I think it's going to be, that game's a toss up for me. USC, Nebraska, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Penn State, Iowa. How many of those games do you think Michigan State could win?
Honestly, okay, so this is going to be a huge year for Michigan State. This is going to be a huge year for Jonathan Smith. Realistically, I always think like, oh, Jonathan Smith is a good head coach. And as I was looking into it, I'm like, he doesn't really have like the greatest track record, if we're going to be honest. It's nothing like that's going to blow you away. Honestly, like he's not a Kalen DeBoer where Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama. It's like, okay, I could see why this is going on. It's kind of lackluster, and this is like a big prove it year for Jonathan Smith. Hey, can you take this offense when this guy that everyone thought had real potential in Aiden Childs, and can you make him look, top tier? And then I know you got some guys. One of them might be a breakout, player. Who knows? But I feel like this is a big prove it year for Jonathan Smith. Do I think they're going to be the worst team? No, but I think the wheels could fall off. And yeah, you're right. This could be a bottom tier team if they don't get things right very early on in the season.
Well, let's talk about a player that could get things right. Who's your breakout player in this conference this year?
My breakout player, so the way I looked at this was a guy that is either under the radar nationally or we really haven't really heard of. So my breakout player is going to be Naziah Hunter, Nebraska wide receiver. He is the transfer from Cal. I think that realistically, I like Nebraska this year. I think Matt Rule, year 3, they've kind of built it out. Yeah, I like where they're at as far as this. I know that there was a ton of hype last year coming in because they got the 5-star quarterback. Realistically, they should have that hype coming into this year. Last year's hype should be this year's hype. But they're flying under the radar. I think that they are going to I think Rayola is going to take the top off on this offense. And I think that Hunter is going to be a huge part of that. And I think that they have 2 good wide receivers in Key and Hunter. And I think that they're going to just kind of air it out. And I feel like this is going to be a breakout year for Hunter.
Yeah, year 3 Matt Rule is usually when the teams pop off and perform really well. I'm going to actually go with I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum on Indiana from you, where I think Indiana is going to be pretty good this year. Maybe not 11 wins, but 9 or 10 wins is pretty solid for them. And I'm going to go with their transfer quarterback from Cal, Fernando Mendoza. I think they targeted a guy who they thought would be perfect for their system. I think he's a slight notch above Curtis Rorick in talent. And this guy's a dog. I mean, he overperformed last year at Cal. He played in some tough games. He had them on the brink of beating Miami. He played really well against Auburn. He played great against Pittsburgh. He played great against NC State. Amazing against Oregon State. Like, he's had some really some flashy games. And I think this is a season that, with a coach that believes in him, that handpicked him for this system, can really thrive in this Indiana team. So who do you have for the just best player of the year in this conference?
Player of the year in the Big Ten is going to be Penn State quarterback Drew Aller. I think that he is going to rise to the occasion. I mean, realistically, he's had great years the last 2 years. The thing is, he just can't get over the hump and beat a really good team. Before it was Michigan and Ohio State. Last year, it was, he had his troubles with Ohio State. Didn't look great. Didn't look great against Oregon. I think this year he takes another step forward. I think he wins the games that are, where he's needed the most. I'm going to go ahead and say Drew Aller. Because the hype is this Penn State team has so much talent coming back. I think that they're going to be constantly in big games. I think that they're going to have the national spotlight. I think Drew Aller is going to perform when needed. Give me Drew Aller.
I'm actually gonna go. I'm going Iowa again. I'm going Mark Gronowski. I think he's had a lot of play under his belt. He has a great team behind him. I think the schedule has some moments where he can really play against some high level talent, show what he got. But I also think he has some easy games where he can load up on some stats. So I'm gonna go with Mark Gronowski. I'm going all in on Iowa this year, and that is leading to our picks for the Big Ten championship game. Who do you think is going to be in it, and who do you think wins it? I'm going to say Penn State is my lock, and my other option. This was a tough one because you automatically think Oregon, Ohio State, and Oregon has a lot going on with their quarterback situation, with the coordinator. Ohio State also switching quarterbacks. I think I'm going all in. I'm just going to say Iowa. I'm going Penn State, Iowa for my championship game. Penn State to win it and go into the college football playoff. And go ahead and roast me in the comments now. But who are your picks?
Oh man. All right, that's crazy. All right. But I see the Iowa vision. I understand. I think it's going to be a good season. Do I think they're going to make it to the championship game? No, but I think
I
they're going
could
to
see
be
if they could win 2 out of 3 games between Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon, I think they could sneak their way into the championship game.
Yeah, I mean, so it's crazy when we think about. So my title game is going to be again Penn State. I feel like this is going to be a huge year for Penn State. It has to be. It just has to be. Their backs against the wall. Everyone's telling them they have to perform, and they're going to go out there and do it. Ohio State. Penn State versus Ohio State, and it's crazy to this point that we both have not chosen the Ohio State player as a breakout or as the player of the year. Realistically, they have the number one offensive player in Jeremiah Smith, and they have the number one defensive player in Caleb Downs. Realistically, yeah, there's a bunch of turnover in this roster, but I think that big time programs fill the holes when needed. I think they're going to have, they're currently in the quarterback, competition. I think it's going to be Julian Sayin. I think that he is going to have not just Jeremiah Smith, but Tate on the other side. I think they're going to reload at running back. I don't see them falling off and having too big of a learning curve. Do I think they're going to be very, very tested, especially like right at the beginning of the season, going into or having Texas that first game? Yeah, but I think that helps to build calluses. I think that this is going to be still a very good Ohio State team. I think they make it to the championship. Did you already say who's going to win your title or no?
Yeah, I said Penn State.
Okay. Then, yeah, I think that Ohio State is going to be a battle-tested team going into this championship game. With all that being said, I think James Franklin finally gets it done. I think that they overcome and they beat Ohio State in this championship game. Penn State wins it. I think that we saw it last year where Ohio State and Ryan Day finally get the monkey off their back. They get a national title. I think that something similar happens with James Franklin this year in the Big Ten. Do I think that they're going to win the national championship? I don't think so. But I think they have a good enough roster, and I think they're well coached enough to get the monkey off their back and win the Big Ten.
Listen, here's my scenario for Iowa getting in. I think one loss in conference gets you in, right? So, let's say Iowa beats Oregon and they lose to Penn State. Penn State is their only loss in the conference, right? Oregon loses to Iowa, so that gives them essentially the tiebreaker, but also Oregon could lose to Penn State, which makes them 2 losses. Ohio State could lose to Penn State, and then we already know that Michigan it's a guaranteed win already if we're counting the last 4 years that Michigan's going to beat Ohio State. So, if we're just going off recent history, Michigan's going to beat Ohio State, and that's their second loss, and which leaves a 1-loss Iowa team to get into the championship game. Call me crazy. That seems like a plausible scenario, is it not?
It could happen. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but hey, I mean, if you're going to swing for the fences. You know what I mean?
Can dream.
Yeah.
I could have went with the easy pick. I could have said Ohio State, Oregon, and just went off of it. But no, we're mixing it up over here.
Okay, is there any other teams that you want to mention? I mean, we haven't even mentioned Michigan yet. We've barely touched on Illinois. Well, we haven't really got into, the Rutgers of it. So, is there anyone that we do want to kind of bring up before we kind of wrap up the Big Ten here?
I think those are the two really interesting middle of the pack teams. Michigan has a shot here with Underwood to be a really good offense. We already know that they always are good defensively. Do I think that they're going to be up in the upper echelon? I think maybe just outside of it. They'll be in the neighborhood of the upper echelon. But I think this could be the start of Michigan coming back to being one of the top teams of the Big Ten, but not necessarily this season. Illinois, they have an outside shot to finish, I feel like, in the top 10, where they bring back their veteran quarterback now, Luke Altmaier. They're really well coached. I think they do a lot of things well. They're battle tested by having a lot of comeback victories in this last season. I think it was like 4 or 5 comeback wins. But then if you look at it on the other end, when a team wins all their close games one season, usually the next season they somehow lose those close games and it kind of redirects the course. So are they able to improve enough to separate themselves from these one-score games, or are they going to be reliant on a hint of luck and timing in those games?
Yeah, I agree. One-score games last year, they were 5-1. I mean, that's the biggest point that you could point to as far as regression in a team. But with that being said, Brett Bielema does kind of he's built out this Illinois roster the way that he really would like to. I mean, the way that he used to do it at Wisconsin, which is, hey, we brought back a ton of starters. I'm Brett Bielema. I like my rosters old. I like with a lot of guys that are playing above what they were recruited at. So not a whole, realistically, any of his teams, even when they won the Big Ten, they didn't have the most talented rosters, but guys who played above what they were, quote unquote, capable of or projected to be capable of. And here with Illinois, it's a lot of the same. They brought back Luke Altmaier, and realistically, he could have went into the NFL. I think that he would have been a guy that would have been drafted this year. And this roster, I feel like, is not the most talented, but they're going to be super disciplined. They're going to be hard-nosed. They are battle-tested. I think that they can build off of the success they had the last year. And you're right, this is like the perfect kind of wild card team where you're like, okay, I could see them doing really well in this conference, or I could see the wheels falling off because, hey, some of these games where it was a coin flip game, they've coin flips the other way this year. Michigan, it sucks. So I want them to be bad. They deserve to be bad. They are a program of terrible people that did terrible things and traded their souls for a national championship. They deserve to be bad. They're not going to be bad, I don't think. I don't think. I mean, realistically, going into Norman, I think week 2. So Michigan's going to be going to Oklahoma. That's going to be a huge test. Do I think that they're going to, be adverse to being like, hey, Bryce, if this gets a little scary for you, we will play Mikey Keene, who's seen a lot of football at Fresno State, who transferred this year as well. I think they would have no problem being like, hey, if he's rattled, we're going to go ahead and throw in another guy in there. But I think that, it's so tough to see a true freshman step in and have big time success, at this level. So it's really hard for me to gauge what Michigan's going to be. But if they have just any semblance of quarterback play, Michigan's more than likely going to be good. I mean, look at what they did last year with quarterback carousel.
And we saw Michigan has no problem going quarterback up by committee, even if it's to their detriment. But Mikey Keene, yeah, he's no slouch. He's definitely played a lot of ball at Fresno State. He's had some good moments. So it's surprising that he transferred to Michigan to potentially be the backup. So do you see him for sure?
He had transferred prior to Bryce Underwood flipping his commitment and going to Michigan.
Yeah,
so
but
I think
he got out, right?
I could have, but I think at that point, he was already like, yeah, let's do it.
Well, we'll see. A lot of interesting storylines from the Big Ten here, but go ahead. That's all you got for this one?
Oh yeah, man, that's all I got. I mean, the Big Ten is going to be a fun conference. I'm really looking forward to it. We know that it's one of the big two. If we're going to be honest, it's one of the big boys as far as where the NFL talent is, and I think week in and week out, we're going to get really good matchups here.
And look out for our video covering the SEC coming out pretty soon here too. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow us on all social medias, and we'll see you next time.